Welcome to Markets Now and Report Analysis. I'm Michelle Ruck with DuWayne Bosse with Bolt Marketing. Well, we have grain starting to leak lower with the livestock futures still mostly higher. And of course, after the WASDE report, we are getting some reaction. And let's kind of pick this apart here, DuWayne. Thanks for joining us. Let's talk first of all about corn and wheat. We did see revisions to ending stocks on both of those due to an increase in exports. Talk about what USDA did and if you were surprised by that at all.
Yeah, well, pleasantly surprised, I'd say. I mean, it wasn't big moves. It's 25 million bushels each. So they increased export demand for corn by 25 million bushels, and they did the exact same for wheat. Wheat, I'm maybe just a little bit surprised, Michelle. I mean, I understand why they did. China's been buying a lot of wheat lately, right? I mean, maybe in future reports, we got to increase it a lot, but that was just recent activity. And, these reports aren't put together last night, of course, are they? They're put together usually about 10 to 14 days ago. So nice to see maybe USDA knew this wheat business was coming, but that surprised me, but I'm happy. It's on the right side of the demand ledger, so.
No doubt, but we're kind of fading this news. We also had export business on top of it with some flash sales in both corn and wheat this morning. So are corn and wheat maybe seeing some profit taking, or is this farmer selling, or what's going on?
I think it's both. I think it's profit taking and some farmer selling. A Friday around noon now, of course, I think the market was higher this morning, hoping for some really bullish numbers, maybe some bullish numbers out of South America they didn't get. So when we didn't get a crazy bullish surprise, it was just easy to take off the gains from so far that we've had this week, or if you're a spec trader. And then farmers, boy, yeah, my phones are getting flooded too of like, how high do you think corn can go? Looking to sell some before the end of the year. So like we've talked about before, every rally is going to be met with farmers selling in that corn market.
Yeah, absolutely. So soybeans, we saw unchanged ending stocks, or USDA left us at 245 million bushels on soybeans domestically, but we did see a little bit of an adjustment in South American production numbers, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. They did lower Brazil's crop, 2 million metric ton, I believe. So a little bit lower than before. So it's down to 161, which is still a rather large crop. And of course, Argentina's unchanged at around that 55 or 48, I think. Argentina is. And I bring up the Argentina number, Michelle, because I think the trade is starting to realize that even with some drought in Brazil, and we're lowering off those early high record expectations a little bit lower for Brazil, Argentina is going to have twice the crop they had last year. Because remember, last year with their drought, it was cut in half. So it was a horrible drought there. And if you take the two countries combined, you're still going to end up with a monster soybean production out of South America. And that's probably what made the soybean market pull back to $13 the last week here.
Yeah, and of course, the market's reacting maybe a little negatively here today. We did not see any revisions on exports either. And like we said, ending stocks were left unchanged. You mentioned the South American numbers, and we kind of talked about this earlier, but on corn, we saw no changes for either Brazil or Argentinian production by USDA either, right?
No, we didn't. And maybe that's my negative surprise. I really thought for sure they would lower the Brazil corn crop. CONAB yesterday came out with a 118.5, but USDA is steady at that 129. That's million metric tons. So really wide margin between the two. And you would kind of assume CONAB being in Brazil would know their production a little bit better than USDA, but maybe we're just kicking the can down the road a little bit. But that whole Brazilian drought we've had so far, that delayed the soybean planting, which really could end up being a bigger corn story at the end, because they probably just won't get as many corn acres planted. And maybe that's why USDA left it unchanged. We'll wait and see if they get the corn acres planted or not. But yeah, disappointing surprise there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you thought maybe it was just too early to make a revision on corn, because second crop safrinha is going to be a big part of that in Brazil.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Okay. What about technically? What are you watching in any of these grain markets right now? Because I know at least corn and wheat have had good enough rallies here where we've run up into some resistance areas, haven't we?
We have just a little bit. Obviously, for March corn, that 490 area seems to be that resistance point, or I should say 495 is one we can't push through. It would be really nice to see that. Everyone's talking $5. Everyone knows that's a psychological number. A lot of guys ask me how high March corn can go, and obviously that depends on a few things, right? Like this report, if we would think that the Brazil crop is getting smaller, we could rally to a 525 if China steps in and buys as much as is rumored out there, we could get to a 535. But without those two things, $5 is just going to be tough in that corn. And for soybeans, I guess I'm watching the bottom side of it, that $13 support area or $12.95 that we were at earlier this week. That really needs to hold here. And I think that's obviously dependent on the weather forecast moving forward. But if they have normal weather, I'm afraid eventually that gets broken.
No, absolutely. I'm with you on that. One thing you did mention about getting above $5 on corn, even if we had a little bit of a change in exports today and a little lower ending stocks number, a 2.1 billion bushel carryout is still what we have to chew through, right?
Right. I love that you brought that up, Michelle. That's why when guys talk about, when do we get back to $6 corn? I'm like, yeah, I think you can forget about that. I mean, even if China steps in a big way and buys corn, I mean, there are rumors them buying 30 to 40 million metric ton versus the 20 they have so far this year. You still got a large ending stock number here that we're going to have to chew through. And, if you want to look forward to next year, I mean, I think we could lose 4 million acres of corn, shift that to soybeans. And if you finally get a trend line yield, which is above 180, you still have a higher ending stock, which, I mean, that's down the road, and that's assuming everything being perfect. But it's hard to get too bullish the corn market. You're right.
Yeah. Cattle are up today. And of course, we've had a huge correction in that market. We've had lower cash, though, and the WASDE wasn't necessarily friendly today. So is this just a little relief rally, you think?
This is just a relief rally. I wish I could say that the lows are in and cattle are going to go higher, but I'm one of those traders that are looking at those retracement levels and being bearish and mentioning that, yes, this has been a horrible slide, but if you're a person that watches the charts, and like I said, those retracement levels, we're not even 50% done on the whole retracement level from where we've rallied from the COVID lows all the way to the highs. Now, maybe those two are both two extremes and we need to narrow it up somewhere in between, but the trade action just doesn't look good, Michelle, to me, does it? I know it's funds just exiting longs and it doesn't have a lot to do with fundamentals, but now the problem is the fundamentals are starting to get a little bearish. Carcass weights this week, Michelle, way up, and that shouldn't surprise anyone either. I mean, very good weather. Now we got some feedlots that are probably behind the 8 ball, let's say, and they want higher prices and don't want to believe this trend is going to continue lower. So they hang on to cattle longer, and that's going to create a little bit more production. And you're right, the WASDE report, if you dig deep enough into it, you'll see the cattle numbers, and it wasn't anything that friendly there. I mean, numbers are still going to be tight in 24, and I think we can rally in 24. My question, Michelle, is how far do we have to go down before we hit that bottom?
Yeah, and hogs, kind of the same setup there when you look at supplies. A lot of upfront supplies, weights are going up there as well. That's going to be kind of a headwind here for both futures and cash, isn't it?
Yeah, really the same story in the hogs is production is high. Smithfield, backing out a few farm contracts. That's not a good story to hear out there. It sounds like we have too much production. China saying the same thing. So, maybe it's all stories and talk, but it sure is hard to get buyers interested in the market if that's the talk that is out there.
Okay. One thing I should have asked you about the WASDE, really, the January, the final report's the big one, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This is normally a snoozer, and that's what we got today. Give it another 30 minutes and we'll start talking about the January report. It's just what we do.
That's right. All right. Thanks for joining us. DuWayne Bosse with Bolt Marketing. That is Markets Now.